Well, good morning, everybody. Great to see so many happy faces this morning on this beautiful February morning in Minnesota. We'll get started here in just a minute or so, let a few people get joined. Well, fantastic. So I just have 2 past the hour, so we'll go ahead and kick things off for this morning's webinar. Want to thank everybody for joining us for our celebration of STEM success in Minnesota career and technical education. We have a great program today and conversation around STEM success and the great things that are going on across the state of Minnesota in this celebration this month of CTE month. Black History Month, as well as Engineering Week this week. So the culmination of multiple crossing points and celebrations and awareness pieces. With that, as we get started this morning, real quick, just as far as viewing goes this morning, please do go ahead and set your view to speaker view. So we'll highlight our speakers that we have today in your view as we're going through and sharing our screen. And the information that they're going to be talking through. The other piece too is with the chat, please do feel free to use that today to add comments or questions. I know as we go through, we'll be taking questions from the chat to our panelists as well as our speakers. So please do feel free to use that chat to ask questions as we go along, and we'll get to those and bring those into the conversation. With that, introductions, for those of you that have not met me, my name is Vic Dreyer. And I'm one of the volunteers with SciMathMN.org, one of the partners in bringing this conversation to you guys today. I'm the board chair and volunteer in many facets as far as the organization goes. My daytime job is with a nonprofit called Project Lead the Way, and we do STEM curriculum for pre-K through 12th grade. But from the classroom, experience both in CTE and math, as well as career and technical education leader, admin, as well as participation in ACT and state organizations where I've worked in the past. So very excited for the conversation today around really making those connections between the STEM successes that are going in career and technical education, as well as those other places where career and technical education are going on, and those connections that we'll make today. With that piece, very excited to introduce the Minnesota STEM Network pieces for our work as far as the organization goes. With this piece, if you're not familiar, our big initiatives are the STEM Teacher Center, where we actually have resources related and linked to the standards for Minnesota, as well as additional resources for teachers and parents, families, and students. So if you haven't been there, please go check that piece out. The other piece is we have STEM Day at the fair that we support on an annual basis, and it's a great day of bringing all sorts of STEM learning together in one place, kick off the state fair every year, as well as the Minnesota STEM Network, which is the facet of SciMathMN bringing you the programming today, and other policy briefings and some other things that we try to advocate for as far as just bringing awareness to what's going on, STEM happenings, and being that connector in Minnesota for the STEM space. If you haven't been recently, please do visit our websites, check out the resources, join the newsletter. For many cases, that might have been the way you were invited to this session, and future sessions that we have in the works and coming in the near future. So with that, I'd like to introduce Eva Skates-Winston, who's going to be our speaker today and share a message around the STEM and career and technical education career clusters. Eva?
Good morning. My name is Eva Skates-Winston, as mentioned, and I'm the CTE Equity Specialist at Minnesota State, and I work a lot with our secondary and particularly post-secondary two-year institutions and supporting them in career and technical education, recruitment, retention, a lot of technical assistance, and we have a lot of professional development that we do in partnership with the Minnesota Department of Education. And I'd like to start off a little bit with with acknowledging why we are here. And I won't read the entire acknowledgement to you, but I do want to take the time to say that for our indigenous people and for those African slaves that were brought over, the blood, sweat, and tears and the contributions that they have made to this country are incredibly important to our being here today. And as we think about as participants, thinking about the mindfulness of the equity and inclusion that we share with each other and the work that we do, it's really important to recognize and look at the authentic ways that indigenous people have connected with the earth, the water, the wind, in their own view of science within their daily lives. And so it's really important that we consider the authenticity of the people that we wish to engage. So the next slide. Excuse me. So there's a lot of different areas where STEM aligns with career and technical education. And STEM can't really be viewed as separate from CTE, but also looking at the secondary and post-secondary programs that are offered, the business education partnerships, the problem-based learning that happens within STEM and career and technical education, the use of technology, and even looking at the cross-disciplinary areas, whether it's math and CTE, science and CTE. We also need to think about the multitude of options that our community and technical colleges offer, not just the universities where engineering and the like are primary options, but there's a plethora of technical careers in STEM and those that also provide critical support to STEM. And looking at STEM and CTE provides opportunities for engagement and the increased awareness with young children through out-of-school partnerships for their early exposure and appreciation and understanding of what STEM really means. But the most important connection is the relationship that this has to our daily lives and in many diverse ways and cultural connections. And however, learners and community alike need that affirmation of their purpose and their contributions in the ways that make sense to them. And that's a really important part of engaging and creating authentic partnerships. Next slide. So again, I talked about that there's a plethora of different ways in which STEM connects to careers. And this image, and it could be that many of you have seen this image before, there are many different ways in which STEM connects to pretty much all of these different areas, whether it's the relationship and knowledge of STEM to business and industry, or to food science, or to information systems, and all these different areas. STEM is interconnected. STEM is not something separate and isolated from CTE. But a word about this particular model is that I just want to share that there are some discussions at the national level about how STEM could be incorporated into all these different areas in multiple fields where there is already a presence of STEM. And I believe the intent is that STEM has a cross relationship with many different fields, and that there's a kind of a natural connection in some ways. So I just wanted to make you aware of that there may be some potential changes that are happening where you'll see STEM integrated in more than one career field. Next slide. I think that is panelists.
Yeah, Eva, thank you very much for setting up things for us this morning and making those connections for us in the career cluster piece. With that, as we get into our panel today, we're very excited to have folks from different backgrounds and specialties and experiences across career and technical education here in Minnesota. With that piece, getting into the panel, have the panelists give a short introduction of themselves and the piece of kind of their name and organization, and then their role as far as supporting the STEM and CTE crossroads in the work that they do every day. So with that, going in the order of the panelists on the screen, Summer, will get things kicked off with you and we'll just go in order.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Summer Heggie. I am the State Director of Minnesota HOSA, Future Health Professionals. I'm also on the team of the Health First Center of Excellence out of Winona State University. I'm actually located in the St. Cloud area. And Minnesota HOSA provides hands-on skill and career-based learning for students starting in 6th grade who are interested in a career or a major in health sciences or healthcare.
Fantastic. Tim?
Hello, everyone. Good to see you. I'm Tim Barrett, the Trade and Industry Specialist for the Minnesota Department of Education. Our offices are in the metro area, but we do serve the entire state. I've been involved with STEM even prior to my work here at the department. I was the Director of STEM Education and Workforce Development for the Minnesota Tech Association prior to coming here. And so there's a lot of connections between what I'm doing now with CTE and how that fits with the work that I was doing before with STEM.
Fantastic. Joseph?
Hey, good morning, everybody. Name is Joseph Adam G, AKA Joey. And I have the honor and privilege of serving as the director for the Kitty Anderson Youth Science Center here at the Science Museum of Minnesota. We're located in St. Paul, and our role in supporting STEM and CTE, I guess, is kind of informal. We have kind of a laboratory of work happening here, so to speak, in developing out new pedagogies for STEM education. We have a pathway for young people that starts in kindergarten and goes through the age of 25, or an earn and learn program from 14 and up. Focus really heavily on building both grassroots partnerships and grass tops partnerships to advise and inform and create opportunities for young people to leverage what they learn with us. And our programming is both for young people and for educators. So we also have resources for educators in thinking about how to adapt our approach, which we call STEM justice. So helping young people to redefine STEM as a tool for addressing and dismantling systems of oppression and achieving collective liberation. So we're kind of in the informal space here, I guess, that we could represent on the panel, and looking forward to the conversation today.
Fantastic. Thank you. Luke? Oh, Luke, you're muted.
Hi, Luke Becker. I teach agricultural science and technology in Bram High School, about an hour north of Minneapolis. I guess I'm lucky enough right now to be the ACTE National CTE Teacher of the Year. And so some of the things that I wear my hat in and with STEM and CTE is I am the competition director of the Minnesota Super Mileage Program, where students build race cars from scratch to see how many miles per gallon they can get and then run them up at BIR. I also am one of the senior NASA educators for the NASA Hunch program for Minnesota.
Fantastic. Well, in talking with each of you over the past couple weeks of getting ready for this event, I know you guys wear many hats and support many different programs in different ways. So really excited about you guys sharing your experiences and your knowledge about what's going on right now. To get things kicked off, I'll start this one out for Tim and other panelists to pile on. But our first question is, looking at STEM education and CTE, where we have a lot of crossover between them and the things that Eva kind of mentioned in those connections, why do you think we don't always relate the two to each other? What's important for students, families, businesses, and industry partners to know about how these coexist and work together? And share some examples possibly of where you really see this working well.
Well, I don't think it's going to be a big surprise to this group that I think one of the biggest challenges we still kind of run up against is the fact that so much of the focus in education is around preparing students for four-year college. That's been kind of the growing experience over the last 20 years. We've seen some changes in that. I think a lot of folks in this group would understand that that's not the only pathway available to students anymore. I know in a lot of the work that I do, and a lot of folks may have heard this already, but so I apologize in advance. But a lot of the times when I'm talking to industry people or I'm talking to education folks, I try to say, we're not talking about an either or proposition, that students either have to pursue STEM or they have to pursue CTE or they have to pursue this. It's an and proposition. There's a lot of things that can come together to make that happen. And so we really want folks to understand that. And I think one of the big things that in talking with our team before this meeting that I wanted to make sure we mention is the fact that the perception, and it's been long term, is that really in most settings, once you leave school, once you're looking for your opportunities in the workforce, it's going to be a 1-to-7 ratio. So there's going to be, for every instance where there's a need for somebody with an advanced degree, a PhD or a master's, there are going to be maybe 2 people that have to have a bachelor's degree supporting that, and 7 people with some form of post-secondary training that would be supporting that kind of job. So the preponderance of jobs that are going to be out there are going to be in those fields where you don't need an advanced degree to do that work. And so I think that's one of the big messages we're still trying to work with. That's a lot of dealing with parents, but it's also dealing with the community in general.
Absolutely. Luke, how about you?
You know, I love what Tim's saying there, and you know, I've spent a lot of time convincing parents, not so much students, but parents, that there are options that do not involve 4-year enrollment. And some of the things that have come to me is just when you know things and when you figure out what's going on. The youth skills training program that allows students to work as welders and machinists at below 18, which is what we consider legal age. You can do that at 16 as long as the company has been certified, and doing some of those programs and showing that the apprenticeship side of the world can work too. CTE and STEM, to me, I don't let them be different in my head, and I treat them the same, and they are the same thing. And we love all these fancy vocabulary buzzwords that, you know, convincing or reminding people that they mean the same thing. It's just how you look at it.
I love that. Summer, how about you with the diversity and health professions? And I just think of, you know, HOSA and the different career connections that you guys make, but, you know, knowledge and awareness around those pieces. What do you think?
I think, to kind of piggyback on what Luke was saying, you know, something that the Health Force Center of Excellence is working on right now is obviously training 1,000 new CNAs to get out into the workplace. And that's also something young people can do. They don't have to have an advanced degree. It's something that they can be trained in a relatively short amount of time, and get them experience in the healthcare field, and also allow them to make some money while they're doing it, which is really great. I think the big thing for HOSA is that we are trying to engage students as early and often as possible to just kind of expose them to different career options in healthcare. Very often, you're not really taking that first career assessment until sometimes 9th grade. And by that point, people have kind of already made up their mind of the kind of pathway they want. So one goal that we have in Minnesota is to really start to engage elementary school students and just talking about different careers in healthcare, because there really is a job for everyone in healthcare. If you want to be a video game designer, there's a job for you in healthcare. If you want to be an accountant or in marketing, there's a job for you in healthcare. And it doesn't mean you want to be a doctor or a nurse just because you are interested in the health sciences or the medical field.
Fantastic. Joseph, how about you? I saw you're shaking your head a lot in agreement. So
Yeah, no, I mean, I think if I step out and zoom out big picture, I mean, I think our paradigm for education and career pathway development is outdated. I mean, I think and in some ways, going back to this model is going back to the roots of how we used to prepare young people for their adulthood. And so I think that there's this, you know, hopefully we're at a critical, pivotal moment where some of these things can start to come together. But I think just the ecosystem of how we're engaging with parents, teachers, informal education spaces, career readiness spaces where young people have opportunity to show up and apply their skills. I think so many of these things just are not working in the ways that they could together. And so much of it is that our paradigm on an education of learning stuff versus learning skills is just at a critical point, and hopefully we can meet the times in the amount of time that we need to ensure that the workforce has who it needs coming to the table, and ensure that young people understand the multitude of pathways they can go beyond what they consider to be education, and help young people reframe education for themselves. Right, as a young person, I always felt like I gotta go sit in this classroom, sit down and learn some content. that has no meaning to me. But that's not what education has to be, and it's not what it is in a lot of these spaces. And so I think that, you know, hopefully we can begin to merge all of these things together, because the practical application of the formal education classroom can be really powerful and empowering. It's just not right now in the way that we do it. And we're siloed and we keep things separate, to the point of this question, right? STEM and CTE, to Luke's point, are not different. And the fact that we're even wondering why they're considered different is, I think, a symptom of the larger systemic problems that we're needing to face.
Yeah, no, love that. You know, with those pieces and what you guys shared on that piece leads it into our next question. Eva shared those career clusters and that connection really STEM to each of those pieces and how it really crosses over in those elements. One of the things that, you know, I think we're all working on in different ways is, you know, really how to expand the access for students for these types of experiences and opportunities. You know, it's a whole world of work that technology and science ever expanding and integrating into that really continues to move the needle. But at the same time, you know, with that piece, it's very, very broad. So in your guys' work, how do you kind of decide, you know, what to offer, what kinds of experiences, maybe what sectors to dial in on? You know, where do you make those decisions? How do you get input from community, those types of things? So what you're focusing on is impactful, and that you're providing that access to more and more students.
I can start with that one. The nice thing about HOSA is that it is a national organization. So our national HOSA board of directors in Texas does a really great job of consistently reviewing our competitive event options for our students and updating those as needed. For example, this year in California, they're piloting a mental health and wellness project, and that allows students to develop a school or community-based initiative that focuses on mental health and wellness, prevention, and early intervention. So it allows them to actually develop a program, present it either to the school or to the community, get feedback about how that program would work in a school or in a community-based organization. And so it's directly in line with what we know youth are facing right now, is really mental health challenges and mental health and wellness. So that's just one example of how National Host is really kind of seeing what's happening in the country and what's happening in the world, and being able to bring those to light for our 6th through college-based students. And we're doing that at Health Force Minnesota as well. The Center of Excellence, we have one person dedicated to mental health first aid training, and we're training tons of people in being able to understand, some warning signs and symptoms, and how to help young people and adults with their mental health and wellness journey.
Yeah, such an important topic. And I just think to the difference it probably makes for students to hear for someone in their peer group to talk about some of those things that would be difficult otherwise for them to share or talk about. That's fantastic.
Vic, one of the things I would mention is, and I think there's a couple of folks I know who are very familiar with this, but as part of CTE and the approval process we have at the secondary level, and even what we're doing with our post-secondary partners, is we are asking the consortiums across the state to be looking at some of the labor market trends. Where are we headed? What are the jobs that are going to be available in the short term and in the long term? We work with a local group, Real-Time Talent, which takes some of the work that our partners at Deed do and kind of tried to contextualize that and give some ideas of where the trends are. Not surprisingly, I think I mentioned this this summer to the folks last time, healthcare is one of the bigger major concerns we have across the state. It's the #1 job need we see in almost all regions of the state, followed pretty closely by manufacturing, but a lot of other fields too. So it kind of helps to narrow it down to figure out, what are the jobs that are going to be coming up? What are the things that are available? And I mean, I think to tie into something that that Joseph said earlier, the idea that we need to start that earlier. Summer mentioned a lot of kids know what they want to do by the time they hit high school. I would even argue to say that middle school students often know what they don't want to do. And so we have to kind of re-engage and start to provide them with some good information about, maybe you don't want to do this specific task or this specific job, but there are things that you can tie to if you have an interest in that space that might fit more with what you think your skill sets are and things like that. So there's at least some very basic information they can look for that kind of help to guide, what their community should be looking at. What are our local needs? What are our regional needs? And really start to help kind of figure out from that perspective, where kids might fit in.
And I'll jump in there too, because when we think about where students fit in, one of the issues that we see is, and I think Joseph mentioned it, is why am I learning this? What does this information have anything to do with me? And they cannot make that personal connection, whether it be trying to figure out why am I learning this particular math. And once they see those connections and they see that there is some way that they can have some personal influence or contribution, say through problem-based learning and thinking about some real issues and things that are happening in my community and how can I apply what it is I'm learning, then they have the opportunity to have a sense to be connected to what STEM is all about, what CTE careers are all about. And if you don't make those connections early on, we lose them.
It's a great point.
Yeah, I think this is a great question to jump in. I think this is a question that we sit with a lot, right? Like, so our program in pedagogy is STEM justice, and that's an inherent. Young people are going to learn about the connections between the content they're learning and taking action to address social justice issues in our program. And our content focus areas are pretty broad. And I think we're always looking, or we really have a lot to learn in terms of how to strategically align the content and the tools, technologies, experiences, processes young people are engaging with in our program with the current and future workforce needs, right? Because our middle schoolers are gonna be in high school and ready for careers when there's probably a different need of the workforce. So this kind of moving target of trying to make sure that the experiences young people have are relevant and directly translate is something that I don't know that we can ever get to. And maybe we can. Somebody else on this panel or in this group probably has a kind of maybe have a strategy there that we can all work with. But for us, it's about how do we help young people feel empowered, inspired to learn, period, and see the connections between what they learn and the ways that they can make change in the world. And we trust and hope that that translates into any future learning opportunity that's career related, that they'll be able to take that mentality and that STEM justice mindset and apply it to anywhere. And as a result, our theory is that then they will gravitate towards learning whatever they're learning because that STEM justice mindset is driving their motivation. But then at the end of the day, we know that there are certain fields that are in high demand for skilled employees. So how can we simultaneously be equipping young people for that specificity while also giving this broader kind of mindset and approach to thinking about careers and what those careers could mean for the ways that they want to be engaged in making change in the world or contributing to their community. But yeah, we sit with that question a lot. Our 4 categories are environmental justice and sustainability, engineering and design, media and technology, and human biology and public health, which are our best take at saying let's go from STEM broadly to 4 categories. But even within those, if we're really trying to equip young people with skills that the industries need, then we need to get even more specific potentially. At the same time, NGSS and the next gen science standards are creating a little bit more of it's not about the content, it's about the processes, it's about the approaches, it's about those transferable skills. And I'd say that that's where we're best at, is the transferable skills, the career specific stuff. We really would lean on this group to help us and inform us on where to weave in specific content to meet current and the trends in workforce needs.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
One of the things that the ACTE board told me after I got all said and done winning the award was that one of the things they loved was that I had gone out and spoken to almost every industry partner around us. And it's, I live or teach in a small school district where we were only graduating 40 kids a year, but I have been to probably 60 to 70 employers around us, and I'm putting the signage and the verbiage and the safety, and our shop looks like the conglomerate of every shop around us for welding and machining, we're asking what they need their employees to know when they come there. And then the other side of this is every year, whenever I get a class and whoever students are in my classroom, they drive which direction we go. And I will pivot completely depending on what I have in front of me. I'm teaching a chemistry class this year where I have almost the entire class as special ed students, and we're teaching chemistry through the vein of small engines, because all of the kids in that class are super motorheads and they understand motors. What they don't understand is chemistry and all the little component pieces of it. And the entirety of that thought process came one day when I said, all right, guys, give me some ideas what you want to learn next. And one of them goes, well, we tear apart a small engine. And it took me about 30 seconds to come up with the how to do that in my head and tie all of the pieces together. We have to have the ability to pivot. We have to have the thought processes behind what STEM and CTE are, because I know there's a lot of fight. Is it STEAM or is it STEM? Is the A agriculture or is it art? And there's no argument to me that either of those is works, but why are we trying to label something instead of solving the problem?
I love that. I love that. Great point, Luke. Well, with that piece, going into our next question around specifically with access and opportunity for all our students. Again, something that is an area we're working on collectively to really scale these experiences and broaden connections for these opportunities. What barriers do you guys see in this work, and where are you seeing some successes and where you'll be able to do those types of things? So, I mean, Luke, I think maybe start with you on some of those pieces of, you know, taking the guidance from the students, but there's only one Luke at your school and or only one Mr. Becker. You know, what do you guys do to connect students maybe that don't have the opportunity based upon master schedule, those types of things, or some of these other you know, teams and those types of things that you're supporting?
Well, I might say an unpopular opinion, but you know, not every teacher is going to get one-on-one connection with every single student. And I always try to find the ones that I know aren't getting hit with a core teacher or you know, at least have a one-on-one conversation with every single student within the first couple weeks of my semester, figure out what it is they need, who they are. You know, we're rotating students so quickly, and I would bet in a bigger school district, you know, you see that student once or twice. In my district, I know every single kid's name in our entire building, and I know who their parents are, and I know who their brothers and their sisters are. And so I'm really working on trying to figure out what they want and what they need, where they're going. If I can get them to say, you know, this is something I'm looking at, we can spend the time looking more into it. You know, as far as pivoting and changing stuff up, it's not uncommon to have 5 different groups in my classroom working on 5 different projects. And you know, how does one Luke Becker do this? I spend a lot of time working with my colleagues from across the state who I have immense respect of, and figure out what they're doing and how they're making things happen. You know, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. What works for me might not work for somebody else, but part of it might. You know, I've learned a ton from Mark Westlake, who's on this call, and Stephen Funk, and different teachers from across the state who I know what their skill set is, and it doesn't match mine. But I know how they're doing it, I know why they're doing it, and I let that kind of mold how I look at things. And my hope is that working with Summer and Tim and Joseph, we can all look at just an Eve, different people and how they relate. You know, my district is primarily white. We only have a handful of minority students, but you know, making everybody feel comfortable is really, really important. Making everybody feel like the education system is just for them is really, really important to me. How we do that all the way across the board, I think we let the teachers be teachers and work what skill sets they have, and hopefully we still have the best of the best, our teachers.
Yeah, I love collaboration and learning from each other to create that environment for everyone. That's great. Summer, how about you?
Yeah, just to follow up on what Luke was saying, HOSA is 100% student-led, but every HOSA chapter, so any school that decides they want to start HOSA has to have an advisor. And typically that advisor is a teacher in the school. But as Luke can attest to, teachers have a lot on their plates. And so it can sometimes be a barrier for some schools to find a teacher who has that little bit of extra time to become their HOSA advisor. And so I love what Proctor did. Proctor has the Proctor Pathways program. There's 4 different pathways that students can take the opportunity and choose kind of what direction they think they want to go in after high school. And one of those pathways is health science and human services. So when they reached out to me at the end of last year, they said, hey, we'd love to start a HOSA chapter. And also our first step is going to be having a community information session to find out what kind of support we could get from our outside community, from our healthcare providers, from our parents, from, just general industry in their community. And so the amazing thing that's happened in Proctor is that a community partner stepped up and is covering the dues for the HOSA members for their first year. And that's a great way to engage, a smaller, for the most part, a more rural high school, but to allow these students to have these opportunities and to give the advisor at that school a little bit of a break, because they know if they get really busy, they can reach out to those community partners and say, hey, I can't leave school for the state leadership conference. Would someone be interested in being a chaperone in my place? And it's a big collaborative effort within the city of Proctor. So I would love to see that roll out everywhere. So if there's anyone on the call that is interested in learning about HOSA from a community perspective, I would love to have that conversation with you.
Fantastic. Great example of partnership, really working to help scale or create opportunities and experiences. Joseph, how about you? Oh, Eva, did you have something?
Oh, actually, I just wanted to say that I really appreciate Summer's perspective, and that we need to be authentic and involved in the community and welcoming their perspectives on how do we engage students about science from a way that makes sense to them and how they normally engage in it in their everyday life. So I just want to say I appreciate that. And it goes back to mindset, what Luke was saying. If we want a supportive environment, we need to change our mindset and the ways that we do things.
Fantastic. Great segue, Joseph. That probably connects to a lot of work that you guys do and even some of the sessions and conversations you guys have hosted recently.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, one thing I didn't note is our program is specifically for female identifying youth and youth of color, as well as youth from low-income families. And we've always maintained 80 to 90% in those demographics. And for us, there's a couple of things. One, again, our pedagogy speaks to and is responsive to the research on what young women and youth of color are looking for in terms of learning opportunities that are empowering, connected, relevant, connected to social justice, giving back in community. But additionally, like, representation matters, and we know that, right? So we're primarily staff of color working with primarily youth of color. That's important to us. That's a core priority for how we hire. And in ways where that's not possible and working with white educators, right, we talk about the need to just lift up and acknowledge how personal cultural identity play into these conversations about social justice and equity. And then if you are a white educator, what we say to our white educators is, like, it's fine if you're a white educator, just make sure that you're able to bring in the perspectives of your young people, whether through guest presentations. In a virtual world, it's a lot easier to bring in professionals of color from these fields to come talk to young people. So making sure that there's representation in your classroom is critical for us. Whether or not you can represent it as the staff that are leading the programming. And then, we're a program that's, a department within the Science Museum with a finite budget and capacity to support students. So one thing we've been doing more of is just sharing our pedagogy and approach through the professional development kind of modules we've been building. some of whom on this call were guinea pigs for us trying to do it virtually for the first time. But yeah, I mean, I think there are more opportunities than barriers at this point to make sure that our learning environments are reflective of the cultural and unique identities of our students. And I think in some ways, COVID is one of the silver linings, is that this virtual learning environment even opens that door further. We had the opportunity during one of our summer STEM Freedom School programs to have our K-8 scholars actually have an opportunity to connect virtually with one of the animators from Coco, who was in California at the time. And it's something that we never would have been able to do here in person. So I think there are more opportunities than barriers. I think figuring out how to make sure our systems are working together to take advantage of those opportunities is, I think, where we maybe fall short.
No, great points. Love the connection too. Sometimes we'll say, students need to see it to be able to see that they can be it. And I just think like you said, Joseph, with COVID, the virtual connections to classrooms, I think of like STEM Meets the Challenge series that was done last year by the Engineering Alliance here in Minnesota, really highlighting STEM professions that really made big impacts or were a big part of a response to COVID. Not just in Minnesota, but globally in some of those instances, as well as so many other organizations that really have young STEM professionals that really represent diverse backgrounds, and sharing those stories can be really engaging and powerful for your students. So thank you very much for sharing that. Eva, did you have something?
Yes, actually, there was a question shared along the line of that engagement. It's about, what are some ideas that folks may have on moving away from traditional career fairs, because students may not be focused in understanding why they're at a career fair. Maybe there's some other ideas of how to engage them besides the, that traditional model.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I threw in there that I've heard, sorry, this is Tim. I've heard folks trying to flip that idea on its head and having, as opposed to having, industry people coming and setting up a table and having students come to them. Students set up table, the industry people come to them, and the students talk about what they're doing. So the industry folks, they say, hey, this is how this connects to what we do. And that would be, maybe a more interesting way for industry people to be thinking about, who are they looking for? What are they going to be able to offer? How do they, I think it gets back to, and I just want to make sure I shared this. And if you've been to the Compass site, you might have seen some of this work that was done over the last couple of years. The STEM page they have around, we spend a lot of time on access and interest, which I think are important. But we spend very little time on identity. I think that's a lot of what we're hearing in this conversation today, is talking about how do we have students or young people start to see how they might fit into this, and how does it fit with their lives? Where do we meet them in the place that they're at? And I think that's a struggle that we all have. That's one of the biggest barriers we have, because, schools got things they have to get done. Businesses have things they have to get done. A lot of times they can get lost. I mean, I think the things that folks are talking about here feel like people step out of their normal pathways to make those things happen, their normal ruts that they're built into. So you have to applaud those efforts. I mean, I think that's important, but it'd be nice if we could spend more time thinking about, well, how do we give people the permission to do more of that kind of work? And it's tricky if we don't have a community that's kind of together on saying, yeah, we want kids to have these experiences. We want them to be able to get there. And it really speaks to the idea that you can't work that in a vacuum, that you have to have partnerships, you have to have collaboration. And so I think that's challenging, because that takes time and effort. Any relationship building takes a lot of time, but I think we're hearing about how that pays off. There's an investment made, and there are the dividends that come out of that. So just something to kind of keep in the mind from a larger perspective.
Adding to what Tim was saying, I just had a conversation with a couple of my colleagues at our FFA interviews last week, and they were talking about how companies are rolling out the red carpet, paying for transportation, buying lunch, a bunch of swag for the kids to get them in. And I think companies are pivoting and trying to get to students earlier than when they're in college, which is a great thing. I stumbled into accidentally volunteering myself and kids for working at the Minneapolis STEM Expo. And I love that event. And I think it's targeted at the right age group of 8th graders, I think, off the top of my head, in the time before COVID. But Anderson Windows brought out a window and a bunch of baseballs and said, all right, throw the baseball through the window and we'll give you a prize if you can break the window. And almost nobody could. You had to hit it 88 miles an hour or better. And all of these companies are doing these hands-on things. And I will bet you that most of those kids remember trying to throw a baseball through that window and failing. And they're probably going to remember Anderson Windows because of it. And there's all these wonderful things. And I love that event. I just wish I could bring my own kids to it because it's Minneapolis School District only. And it takes a lot of effort to put something like that on and a lot of money.
Luke, thanks for sharing that piece. That's a great segue. All of you kind of make these connections to our next question. And really looking at how we expand these connections and maybe even start to build student identity around STEM and careers. And, what are we looking at as far as those engagement programs that are really aimed more at middle school and elementary students, making those earlier connections? What practices and supports do you see in this area? And what has really been impactful that you're seeing or you're hearing, or maybe is a part of what you already support? So with that, I know, Joseph, you mentioned some of the stuff that you guys do with some of this younger age groups. Maybe start with you and talk about some of that work.
Sure. Yeah, I think our earlier grades, so our K-8 students, we have after school, summer, and weekend programming that we do both in the schools, at the Science Museum, and at partner sites in the summer. Our summer program is a STEM Freedom School, so building off of the Children's Defense Fund's Freedom School model and pedagogy for literacy, we have a STEM-focused Freedom School, which is very culturally specific and engaging and exciting for young people. Another thing that we do in our program that's a little unique is that our programming is actually led by young adults, BIPOC young adults who are interested in teaching. So another career pathway we focus on here is into education, trying to diversify Minnesota teachers. And that is again, that near peer mentorship, making sure there's representation in the space, and then leaning on content expertise when it's lacking necessarily in some of the educators that we train. So yeah, keeping it fun, keeping it hands-on, spending time team building community is a core practice for us before we dive into content. And again, of course, connecting the learning to making change. We talk about systems of oppression with our middle schoolers and elementary schoolers, and trying to help them understand the ways that they can make change, and then layering content on top of that.
Oh, fantastic. And a great point, right? When we connect students to all these great careers all the time, but the one that maybe we overlook the most is being an educator. We need both informal and formal educators in this space. I think that's been really heightened by what we've gone through the past couple of years. There's always been a teacher shortage, but that continues to grow, and so it's a very rewarding career for those of us that have found a place in it. So absolutely. Well, Summer, I know you also mentioned just that 9th grade pivotal time period where that's kind of that first career interest inventory. How about you with the Center of Excellence and HOSA? What kind of connections and exposure do you guys try to work with to connect with those middle school students before 9th grade?
Yeah, I know, for HOSA, students can start a chapter as young as 6th grade. We don't have a lot of middle school chapters in Minnesota, and I think that's across the country. We don't see a lot of middle school chapters, so that's something nationally we're working on. As I said before, personally, I would like to start reaching out to students as early as 3rd grade and just kind of presenting them with other careers other than doctor or nurse. If you think about when we were all in elementary school and we had career day, I want to be a police officer, I want to be a fireman, I want to be a nurse. My nephew actually says he wants to be an inventor, so we're making some strides there. But I think just, having a paramedic come in and talk about what it's like to work on an ambulance and what does that mean, and just kind of exposing students little by little to other parts of healthcare that they may not realize or understand. Having someone come in who's in charge of like cleaning the medical instruments. I can imagine when I was in 3rd grade, I would have thought that was pretty cool. So just trying to open their eyes and help them understand that there's more to a career in healthcare other than being a doctor or nurse. And I know at, part of the Health First Center of Excellence, we do offer a couple of scrubs camps in the summer that are for younger students. And, we're always open to having conversations with community partners who want to offer those scrubs camps for younger students, and how can we make those be successful?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that.
Steve, I'll just add to that quickly, and it relates back to what Joseph and Luke were saying, is that when we're trying to present these different careers to students and give them some understanding and exposure, if we come in from a different perspective of their experiences, whether it's experiences in healthcare, whether it's a emergency room or having a family member that's sick, and making connections about how there are all these different careers where they can help support their community, as well as those different types of careers where they can actually educate and advocate within and have that background within STEM, or whether it's healthcare or some other area, so that they can make some contributions in a way that makes sense to them.
Yeah, really connecting to the impact, how you can make an impact on your community and the world. I don't recommend this experience to anyone, but I had a great one. My 5-year-old actually had to have surgery at Children's Hospital, but in retrospect, looking at the experience from checking in at the front desk at the beginning of that experience, and all the medical professions that we came in contact with during that experience, I was able also as a parent to walk my son to the surgery room and just realize how big that team was in that room during that time. But then even for follow-up care, counseling, the types of impact, they had a specialist that came in that worked with my son just coming out of anesthesia, and for recovery pieces, just, to make sure he was supported. There was a person supporting me and my wife. I mean, it's just phenomenal. But quite honestly, like, not everybody gets to have that experience, and I hope nobody has to have that experience, but it does really bring this perspective of how many different healthcare professions that are unknown or unexposed to our students about where those possibilities are. So, starting with early age students to really explore and expand that is huge. So one of those elements that life experience is something you could turn around and share, but for them to engage in something that they know really makes a difference in other people's lives or their community or society at large is a huge passion and a connection for engagement, I think, too, as well. Luke, how about you? I know a lot of your stuff's at the high school level, but talking about how all the students and are able to do that because of the small size campus, but I imagine in the community and some of the other pieces too.
Actually, one of the coolest things, I get 7th and 8th graders in a trimester rotation, so I see every one of them. But we'll do the NASA project as a portion, and then I'll let them either, if the student has a passion and wants to see if they can't move it forward, they can skip the next project and they can continue on. And a couple of my students hold the record for the youngest national finalist for Hunch. And when the Hunch engineers were at our school about 2 weeks ago, they took their prototype back, and the NASA engineers are basically taking their design and putting it into there's 16 mice on the International Space Station at mostly all times. And so it's how to feed them. And I have a set of 8th graders who designed a portion that are going to go up to the International Space Station probably in the next 8 months. And so it's, providing real life, real world. And I bring that down, I do it with my 7th graders, and it's as young as I can do it because that's my first opportunity with them. But, once we get to a certain age, all of the creativity is beaten out of us. And so, providing a place where you can use that childlike wonder and creativity and imagination, and and when they start to realize that they actually could solve a problem for NASA as 7th and 8th graders, you know, the ceiling moves up a couple feet. And every time we can move that ceiling up a couple feet for every one of our kids is always going to be a great thing. I love real life hands-on problem-based learning. I hate building widgets. There's nothing I detest more. And so, you know, wherever we can start that, I have 7th and 8th graders on my international super mileage team. Sometimes they get age limited out because the competition says they got to be 13 or 14, but you know, providing opportunities for students as young as we possibly can is really, really critical.
Absolutely. Well, we're nearing the end of our time, but to kind of send us off in this last question for our panelists, we really have a diverse audience on today, and that we'll be looking at the recording of this piece. So for each of you, you know, if you had kind of one recommendation or one thing for people to take action to get more involved or to learn more, or to possibly connect with classrooms of students to share their STEM career experiences or you know, their expertise or specialties, what would that be? That one thing that you would suggest for people, or how to get connected or how to get involved? And we'll just go the order of the panelists on the screen. So Summer, we'll start off with you if that works.
Yeah, thanks. So there's a ton of opportunities, especially at Minnesota HOSA, to get involved. We're always looking for healthcare professionals to talk to our students, either virtually or going to a high school and talking to their chapter in person. I would encourage anyone and everyone on this call to check out the different career and technical student organizations and see if there's a fit for you on their board, as a volunteer, as a speaker. We always need judges for our conferences and our events. You don't have to be in healthcare to judge a lot of our events. We just need people who want to help our students improve and be better leaders and communicators and collaborators and really be the best students they can be. So if you're interested in HOSA or really any of the CTSOs, you know, certainly reach out to Tim or myself and we can connect you with the right folks if we're not it. So thanks everybody for being here.
Thanks, Summer. Tim, how about you?
I want to say thanks as well. I appreciate everyone being here. And I think I have to kind of, what Summer was saying about there's just a lot of opportunities. So I guess take the time and find the organization that might fit for you. There's a lot of opportunities. There's lots of different groups that can be involved with this work. I know one place to start for us is to go to the CTE section of our website on MDE, because we all of our specialists work with different outreach groups and different trade association groups. So there's different stripes and different types of experiences that those organizations are offering and looking for. Summer mentioned, you know, judging and things like that. And we've even put together a resource just saying, you know, there's about 18 different ways that industry could get engaged with schools, but there are certain other things that you could be doing as well. And so I think, I guess, go and look, because it's there. All you got to do is turn the rock over, which is probably a horrible metaphor, but they are there. Look for them. They'll be there. Folks are looking for help. They would welcome your just the conversation. So just get started.
Fantastic. Joseph?
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add. Appreciate the opportunity to be on the panel this morning and hear everybody's comments in the chat and on the call. So yeah, reach out. There's lots of opportunities. My email, I'll throw it in the chat if folks want to connect.
Fantastic. Luke?
Listen to your students. They have come up with some of the greatest ideas for contests and things that we're trying to do. They'll say, hey, Mr. Becker, I want something in the food area. Do you know of something? And I said, no. And we've had 2 global finalists for the World Food Prize. And all those kids have gotten major scholarships for doing them at the same time. Writing is not my wheelhouse. Food, I understand pretty well, but you know, global agriculture is a different animal altogether. And having to learn that and push myself, it's made me a better teacher. It's gotten those kids farther in their career field areas. But Like I said before, I love problem-based real-world solutions, and even better if we can put them in front of the decision makers and the people who can actually do that. It brings the students' level of availability up, it brings their desire up, and it also very much helps the community be supportive. I've yet to find the parent who's like, why are you working with NASA? That's dumb. It's usually the exact opposite of that statement.
Great. Well, and thanks to all of our panelists for sharing today. Really appreciate you guys helping with the conversation and really sharing your resources and your experiences. With that, Eva, I'm going to turn it over to you to just give us some couple final thoughts.
And actually, everyone has said so many important things. Saying things differently, different mindset, ways to be creative. It starts with building that student identity and their voice for them to be creative, which helps you to be creative and to do things differently. And connecting with students with where they are in terms of their natural connection with STEM and CTE, so that they can learn about their purpose and their contributions that they can make, and that everyone has a place and everyone fits within these authentic partnerships. And I just want to say thank you very much to everyone, because this is how we build the trusting relationships.
Absolutely. No, I think this could be the start of something special for all of us. So really appreciate everybody's participation today. Just real quick before we sign off, again, if you're new to SciMathMN and some of the things that we support, highly recommend you come connect with our websites with the resources and also upcoming events, those types of things. If you have interest in kind of joining in some of the work or possibly being a part of a future panel on a topic that you have specialties in, please do reach out to me at chair@scimathmn.org. The other piece too is if you're not already registered or signed up for a newsletter, you can use this link, and I'll also put that in the chat here in just a second. It's also right on the homepage of our website. So if you join, you'll get updates about future events like this one and some others that we have planned and going into the future. And one of those is STEM Day at the fair, like I mentioned at the beginning. I'm excited to see things come back with the State Fair last summer. Always exciting to have so many different stakeholders and groups really showcasing different STEM experiences during that first day of the fair. With that, you guys have a wonderful day and enjoy. And thank you again to all of our panelists and our guests, and to all of you for what you do for students every day. Guys, have a wonderful day.